The moment I heard Dr. Marcus Weld tell the nurse to slip my wife an envelope while I was supposedly unconscious, I knew my marriage was over. What I didn't know was that Elena was trying to end me. Is his wife still in the waiting room? Weld's voice drifted through the surgical haze as I lay on the table, pretending the anesthesia had knocked me out completely. Yes, doctor, came the nurse's reply. Good. After we finish, give her this envelope. Don't let him see it. I'm Owen Grant, 38 years old, and I'd built a decent tech consulting business from nothing. Smart enough to know when something stinks, dumb enough to marry a woman who saw me as a walking ATM. The vasectomy was supposed to be routine. Elena's idea, actually, said she was tired of birth control pills messing with her hormones. Real thoughtful of her. The procedure felt wrong from the start. Too much pressure, too much time spent on what should have been simple. When Weld finally stepped back, I caught him sliding something metallic into a small container. Not medical waste, something deliberate. All done, he announced. Recovery should be straightforward. I kept my eyes closed as they wheeled me to recovery, mind racing. Elena had insisted on this particular surgeon, claimed he was a family friend from way back. Funny how she'd never mentioned him in 5 years of marriage until last month. The nurse, Claire according to her badge, helped me sit up 20 minutes later. Through the doorway, I watched her hand Elena a manila envelope. My wife's face lit up with something that definitely wasn't relief about my successful surgery. How are you feeling, Mr. Grant? Claire asked. Like someone just played games with my family jewels, I said, forcing a grin. But I'll live. Would I, though? That was starting to feel like an open question. Elena drove me home with unusual attentiveness, asking about pain levels and offering to stop for ice cream. The woman who usually couldn't be bothered to ask about my day was suddenly Florence Nightingale. Red flags were practically slapping me in the face. What did the nurse give you? I asked as we pulled into our driveway. Just post-op care instructions, Elena said smoothly. Nothing important. Our house sat in one of those suburban developments where every lawn looked identical and everyone pretended to be happy. Elena had picked it, said it was perfect for our image. I should have asked whose image we were projecting and why it mattered. That night, while Elena showered, I found the envelope in her purse. Inside were standard post-op instructions, a prescription for pain medication, and a consent form I'd never seen before. At the bottom, in the small print, was a line item that made my blood freeze. Foreign object insertion, patient consent verified. I hadn't consented to any foreign object. My hands shook as I photographed the documents with my phone, then carefully returned everything to Elena's purse. The incision site throbbed, but not from surgical pain. Something was wrong down there. Something hard and angular that definitely wasn't supposed to be part of my anatomy. Elena emerged from the bathroom in a silk robe, looking more beautiful than she had in months. How are you feeling, honey? Fantastic, I lied, really looking forward to the healing process. She kissed my forehead with what felt like genuine affection. I'm so proud of you for doing this. It shows real commitment to our future. Our future, right? The same future she'd been discussing in hushed phone calls for the past month, always stepping outside or into another room when I got close. The same future that apparently required surgical modifications I hadn't agreed to. I waited until Elena fell asleep, then crept downstairs to my office. A quick internet search for Dr. Marcus Weld revealed an impressive resume, multiple awards, and a specialty in minimally invasive procedures. What it didn't reveal was any connection to Elena's family or past. More digging turned up something interesting. Weld had been investigated 3 years ago for experimental procedures performed without proper consent. The charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence, but the complaints were there in medical board records. Patients claiming they'd been implanted with devices without their knowledge. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Derek. How'd the snip go? You officially shooting blanks now? I stared at the message, wondering how to explain that my wife might have just had me surgically sabotaged. Derek was a good friend, but this sounded insane even to me. Went fine, I texted back. Weird doctor, though. All doctors are weird. That's why they cut people for a living? True enough. But most doctors didn't slip mysterious envelopes to patients' wives or insert foreign objects without consent. I spent the rest of the night researching medical implants, tracking devices, and ways to end someone that might look like surgical complications. The internet is a dark place when you're paranoid at 3 in the morning, But it's also educational. By dawn, I had a plan. Not a good plan, but a plan. The X-ray technician at St. Mary's Hospital across town looked confused as she studied the images. "Mr. Johnson," she said, using the fake name I'd given, "can you tell me about any recent surgeries?" "Minor procedure," I said, "but something feels wrong." Dr. Sarah Phelps, the radiologist, entered with a frown. "I need to ask you some direct questions. This object in your pelvic region, it's not medical-grade titanium or surgical steel. It appears to be some kind of electronic device." My stomach dropped. Electronic? GPS tracker, maybe? Or something more sophisticated? The point is, this wasn't placed here for medical reasons. Someone wanted you to carry this device without knowing it. The room spun slightly. Elena hadn't just been cheating on me. She'd had me surgically bugged like a wild animal. "Can you remove it?" I asked. "Local anesthesia, 15 minutes, Dr. Phelps said. "But you need to call the police. This is attack, possibly attempted homicide, depending on what that device is programmed to do." 20 minutes later, I stared at a small metallic cylinder about the size of a pill capsule. Dr. Phelps had placed it in a sterile container, handling it with obvious caution. "GPS trackers?" I asked. "Partially, but there's more circuitry than necessary for simple location monitoring. I'd recommend having this analyzed by someone who understands electronics." I paid cash and left through the emergency exit, paranoid about cameras. The rain had started, turning the October afternoon gray and miserable. Perfect weather for discovering your wife was trying to end you. My phone rang as I reached my car. Elena. "Hey, honey. How are you feeling today?" "Better," I said, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. "The pain's manageable." "Good. I'm at the charity fundraiser tonight, remember? Don't wait up." Another charity event. Elena had been attending a lot of those lately, always vague about which charity or where the events were held. Funny how charitable she'd become right around the time she started acting secretive. "Have fun," I said. "I'll probably just rest and watch TV." "Love you," she said, and hung up. Right. I drove to an electronics repair shop in a sketchy part of town, the kind of place that didn't ask questions about where you got your devices. The owner, a thin guy with multiple piercings named Jake, examined the implant under a magnifying lamp. "This is military grade," he said after 10 minutes. "GPS, yeah, but also remote activation capability. See this component? That's for delivering an electrical charge or releasing a chemical payload." Chemical payload? Like a poison capsule. Someone could trigger this remotely and inject whatever's stored in this chamber directly into your bloodstream. Untraceable. Would look like a heart attack or stroke. I sat down heavily in Jake's cluttered shop, surrounded by broken phones and computer parts. Elena hadn't just been tracking me. She'd turned me into a remote-controlled assassination target. "How long would I have had after activation?" I asked. "Minutes, maybe less. This thing's designed to end quickly and cleanly." I paid Jake $200 cash for his analysis in silence, then sat in my car trying to process everything. My wife of 5 years, the woman who made coffee every morning and complained about my socks on the floor, had conspired with a surgeon to plant a homicide device in my body. The rational thing would be to call the police immediately. But Elena was smart, well-connected, and convincing. I was a guy with a paranoid story about tracking devices and homicide plots. Who would believe me without more evidence? I needed help, but not from the cops. Not yet. Derek had mentioned a private investigator last year when his brother suspected his wife of cheating. Rico Saldana, former police detective turned Pete, the kind of guy who understood that sometimes the truth needed to be uncovered before it could be proven. I found Rico's office above a bail bonds shop downtown. He was exactly what Central Casting would order for a private eye. Rumpled suit, coffee-stained desk, suspicious eyes that had seen too much. "You look like a man with problems," Rico said as I entered his office. "My wife tried to have me ended," I said, "but I can't prove it yet." Rico leaned back in his chair. "That's the kind of problem I specialize in. Tell me everything." I spent an hour laying out the whole story, the vasectomy, the envelope, the tracking device, Elena's suspicious behavior. Rico took notes and asked sharp questions that made me realize how deep this conspiracy might go. "We need surveillance," Rico said finally. "Photos, recordings, documentation of everything she's doing. If she's planning to end you, she's probably planning to inherit your assets too. That means she needs you dead soon." "How soon?" "Depends on her timeline. But if I were her, I'd want this wrapped up within a month. The longer she waits, the more chances for something to go wrong. A month, maybe less. What do you charge? I asked. 500 a day plus expenses. But if your wife is really trying to homicide you, I'll consider it a public service. I wrote Rico a check for $3,000. Find out who Elena really is and what she's planning. I have a feeling my wife isn't exactly who she claims to be. Rico smiled grimly. They never are. Rico called 3 days later with news that turned my world upside down. Your wife isn't Elena Martinez, he said. Her real name is Angela Voss, and she's got a record. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. She's been married 4 times in the past 12 years. I sat in my car outside the coffee shop, phone pressed to my ear, watching normal people live their normal lives. 4 times? 4 husbands, all wealthy, all dead within 2 years of marriage. Natural causes every time, heart attacks, strokes, accidents. But the pattern is clear. Jesus Christ. It gets better. Dr. Marcus Weld isn't just her accomplice. He's husband number 3. Legally, they're still married, which means your marriage to Elena, or Angela, or whatever she's calling herself, is completely invalid. The coffee shop window reflected my stunned expression. I'd been living with a serial killer for 5 years, thinking she was my wife when she was actually married to her partner in homicide. Where are you now? Rico asked. Downtown, trying not to have a nervous breakdown. Meet me at my office in an hour. I've got photos you need to see. Rico's evidence folder was thick with surveillance photos, documents, and financial records. Elena, Angela, whatever her name was, had been busy. The charity events were meetings with potential marks, wealthy men she was evaluating as future targets. The family-friend relationship with Weld was their cover story for a criminal partnership spanning over a decade. Look at this, Rico said, spreading out bank statements. She's been moving money out of your joint accounts for 3 months, small amounts that wouldn't trigger alerts. It's all going to an offshore account registered under another false identity. The photos were worse. Elena and Weld, together at restaurants, hotels, embracing like lovers. But not just lovers, conspirators. In one image, they were examining what looked like medical equipment. In another, Elena was handing Weld a thick envelope. They're not just planning to end you, Rico said. They've done this before, multiple times. You're just the latest sufferer. Why me? Your mother's inheritance. Ruth Grant is worth what, $3 million? About that. And you're the sole beneficiary. Elena marries you, waits for your mother to die naturally or helps her along, then has you ended in a way that looks accidental. She inherits everything as your widow, disappears, and starts over somewhere else with a new identity. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. No messy divorce, no splitting assets, no loose ends, just end an inheritance, clean and profitable. We need to call the police, I said. Rico shook his head. With what? Circumstantial evidence and a paranoid husband's suspicions? Elena's smart. She's covered her tracks legally. The implant device is gone. You removed it from your body without police supervision. And there's no direct evidence linking her to the previous end. So what do? We get creative. Elena thinks she's running a perfect con, but she's made mistakes. She's gotten comfortable, sloppy. We use that against her. Rico outlined a plan that was risky, but might work. We document everything, build an ironclad case, and then force Elena and Weld to incriminate themselves. It meant playing along with their homicide plot while staying one step ahead. This is dangerous, Rico warned. If they realize you know, they'll accelerate their timeline. The tracking device was probably their backup plan. They might try something more direct. Like what? Car accident, home invasion, food poisoning. These people are creative. I thought about Elena making coffee every morning, preparing meals, being attentive to my needs. How long had she been looking for opportunities to end me? There's something else, Rico said. Your mother's medical records show she's been prescribed some unusual medications recently. Heart medication she doesn't need, blood thinners that could be dangerous at her age. My blood ran cold. Elena's been visiting her twice a week, playing the devoted daughter-in-law while slowly poisoning her. Ruth probably has weeks, maybe days. I called my mother immediately. She sounded weak, confused, complaining about feeling dizzy and tired all the time. Elena's been such a help, Ruth said, bringing me meals, making sure I take my medications. I don't know what I'd do without her. Mom, I need you to stop taking any medication Elena gives you. Only take what comes directly from your doctor. What? Owen, that's ridiculous. Elena's just trying to help. Please, Mom, trust me on this. I'll explain later, but right now I need you to promise me you won't take anything Elena brings you. Ruth agreed reluctantly, probably thinking I was having marital problems and taking it out on my wife. If only it were that simple. That evening, Elena came home from another charity event in an unusually good mood. She kissed me hello and asked about my recovery, playing the caring wife perfectly. How's your mother doing? She asked while preparing dinner. Better. I think those new medications are helping. Elena's smile faltered slightly. Oh, good. I was worried about her. She seemed so weak last time I visited. Yeah, well, she's tougher than she looks. We ate dinner like a normal married couple, discussing our days and making small talk. Elena mentioned a weekend trip she wanted to take, somewhere romantic to celebrate my recovery. I agreed enthusiastically while mentally noting that a remote location would be perfect for staging an accident. After Elena went to bed, I sat in my office planning my next move. Rico was right. We needed Elena and Weld to incriminate themselves clearly and undeniably. That meant giving them enough rope to hang themselves while staying alive long enough to see them use it. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to my lawyer, outlining everything I'd discovered and requesting an immediate change to my will. If Elena wanted to end me for money, she was going to be very disappointed with the inheritance. The next morning brought the first direct threat. I was leaving for work when a black sedan pulled up beside my car. The window rolled down, revealing a man I'd never seen before. Thick build, cold eyes, the kind of face that had seen violence. Owen Grant, he said. Yeah? You've been asking questions about people who don't like questions. Maybe you should stop. Maybe you should mind your own business. He smiled without warmth. This is my business. Have a good day, Mr. Grant. Hope it's not your last. The sedan drove away, leaving me standing in my driveway with shaking hands. Elena's network was bigger than I'd thought, and they were getting nervous. I called Rico immediately. They sent someone to threaten me. Description? I gave him what details I could remember. Rico promised to run the information through his contacts and see if the man matched any known associates of Elena or Weld. This is good news, Rico said. How is an end threat good news? Because they're panicking. People make mistakes when they panic. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Every phone call could be Elena checking my location. Every knock on the door could be another threat. I'd become paranoid in my own life, suspicious of everyone and everything. My business partner, Tom, noticed my distraction during our afternoon meeting. You okay, Owen? You seem on edge. Just some personal stuff, I said. Nothing that affects the business. If you need time off, take it. We can handle things here. I almost laughed. Time off wouldn't solve this problem. Only exposing Elena and Weld would end the threat. That evening, I decided to confront my situation head on. Elena was in the kitchen when I got home, preparing what looked like a special dinner. Candles, wine, my favorite meal. The condemned man's last supper. What's the occasion, I asked. Do I need an occasion to celebrate my husband? The word husband felt like a mockery, now that I knew she was already married to someone else. But I played along, complimenting the meal and acting grateful for her attention. I've been thinking about our future, Elena said over dinner. Maybe it's time we started a family. I thought that's why I got the vasectomy, so we wouldn't have kids. Well, procedures can be reversed. Or we could adopt. I just think it's time we took the next step. The next step in her plan, more likely. A child would complicate the inheritance, give her a stronger legal claim to my assets. Or maybe she was just playing with me, enjoying the irony of discussing our future while planning my end. Let's see how my recovery goes first, I said. After dinner, Elena suggested we watch a movie together. She curled up beside me on the couch, head on my shoulder, playing the loving wife perfectly. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed we were happy. My phone buzzed with a text from Rico. Got info on your visitor. Name's Victor Reeves, enforcer for hire. Multiple arrests, no convictions. Dangerous. I deleted the message and tried to focus on the movie, but Elena's presence felt suffocating. This woman had been planning my homicide while sharing my bed, making coffee while plotting my end, discussing our future while stealing my money. I love you, she whispered during a romantic scene. Love you too, I replied automatically. The lies were getting easier. Maybe that's what survival required, becoming as deceptive as your enemies. Later that night, I waited until Elena was asleep, then crept down to my office. I had work to do, evidence to gather, plans to make. If Elena wanted to play a deadly game, I'd show her what a real player looked like. I started by documenting everything: dates, times, conversations, financial transactions. Then I began my own investigation into her past, using the information Rico had provided to dig deeper into Angela Voss's criminal history. What I found was chilling. 4 previous husbands, all dead, all leaving substantial inheritances. The methods varied: heart attacks, accidents, sudden illnesses, but the pattern was consistent. Elena would marry a wealthy man, gain his trust, slowly isolate him from friends and family, then end him when the timing was right. I was husband number 5 in a serial homicide spree spanning over a decade. The documentation took hours, but when I finished, I had a comprehensive file on Elena's criminal career. Rico was right. She'd made mistakes, gotten comfortable, left trails that could be followed by someone who knew what to look for. Now I needed to make her make bigger mistakes. I drafted an email to Elena, scheduling it to send the next morning while I was at work. Honey, I've been thinking about what you said regarding starting a family. Maybe we should talk to a financial planner about setting up trust funds and updating our wills. I want to make sure you're taken care of if anything happens to me. The message would accomplish 2 things. It would make Elena think I was planning to leave her money, encouraging her to move forward with the homicide plot, and it would create a timeline showing I was concerned about my safety before anything happened to me. By dawn, I had the foundation of a plan. It was risky, possibly stupid, but it might work. Elena thought she was hunting prey, but she was about to discover she'd chosen the wrong sufferer. I was done being afraid. It was time to fight back. Rico's surveillance photos arrived the next morning, and they were perfect. Elena and Dr. Weld at a restaurant, heads together over documents that looked suspiciously like insurance policies and legal papers. Elena handing Weld what appeared to be a key, probably to our house. Weld giving Elena a small package that could have contained anything from poison to another tracking device. They're accelerating their timeline, Rico said when I called him. These photos were taken yesterday evening while you were at home. Elena told you she was at a charity event? Yeah, the Save the Whales Foundation or something equally vague. There was no charity event yesterday, I checked. They're not even trying to maintain her cover story anymore. That meant they were close to making their move. The threatening visit from Victor, Elena's sudden interest in family planning and financial arrangements, the private meetings with Weld, everything pointed to an imminent attempt on my life. What's our next step? I asked. We force their hand, make them commit to a specific plan we can document and prevent. Rico outlined a strategy that was elegant in its simplicity. We'd feed Elena false information designed to make her think she had a perfect opportunity to end me, then document her response and gather evidence of the conspiracy. This is the dangerous part, Rico warned. If something goes wrong, if they realize it's a trap, they might just shoot you and claim self-defense. They're going to end me anyway. At least this way I have a chance. That afternoon, I called Elena from work and delivered the first part of our bait. Honey, I have great news. Mom's doctor says she's responding well to her new treatment. He thinks she might have years left instead of months. Elena's pause was telling. That's wonderful, Owen. I'm so happy for her. I know, and I've been thinking about what you said regarding our future. Maybe we should take that romantic weekend you mentioned. Get away somewhere private where we can really talk about our plans. That sounds perfect. When were you thinking? This weekend? I found this cabin rental up in the mountains. Very secluded, very romantic. Just the 2 of us. I'll make arrangements, Elena said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. A remote cabin was exactly what she'd want for staging an accident. Phase 1 complete. Now for the harder part. I spent the rest of the week playing the role of an unsuspecting husband, while Rico positioned surveillance equipment and coordinated with his contacts in law enforcement. We couldn't involve the police directly yet, but Rico had friends who would respond quickly if things went wrong. Elena was unusually attentive during those days, asking about my work schedule, my plans, whether I'd told anyone about our weekend getaway. She was gathering intelligence, making sure there wouldn't be any unexpected visitors or witnesses. Thursday evening brought another visit from Victor. This time he didn't bother with subtle threats. Change of plans, Mr. Grant, he said when I answered the door. Your wife would like to see you. Elena's at book club. No, she's not. Victor was right. Elena was waiting in a black SUV parked across the street, window down, watching our conversation. When she saw me looking, she waved cheerfully. Get in the car, Victor said. We're going for a ride. I had no choice. Victor was twice my size and probably armed. I climbed into the SUV, wondering if this was how it would end. Not in a romantic cabin, but in some industrial area where my body wouldn't be found for weeks. Elena sat in the passenger seat, still playing the loving wife. Hi, honey. Sorry about the dramatics, but we need to talk. About what? About your recent activities. The hospital visits, the private investigator, the questions you've been asking. My stomach dropped. They knew about Rico, which meant they probably knew about everything else. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. Elena turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw her without the mask. Cold eyes, predatory smile, the expression of someone who enjoyed having power over others. Owen, sweetheart, I know about the tracking device. I know you had it removed. I know you hired Rico Saldana to investigate me. What I don't know is why you're making this so complicated. Because you're trying to end me. Well, yes, but that was always the plan. You had to know this marriage wouldn't last forever, and the casual admission hit me like a physical blow. 5 years of my life, 5 years of believing I was loved, reduced to a business transaction with a predetermined expiration date. Why? I asked. Money, obviously. Your mother's inheritance, your business, the life insurance policies. Did you really think someone like me would marry someone like you for love? Victor drove through the city while Olena explained their plan with the enthusiasm of someone discussing a hobby. The vasectomy had been their first attempt, a slow-acting poison that would have ended me weeks later, making the end look natural. When I'd had the device removed, they'd been forced to consider more direct methods. The cabin weekend was going to be perfect, Elena said. Hiking accident, fall from a cliff, very tragic. But now we'll have to improvise. The police will investigate. Rico knows everything. Rico Saldana had a car accident this afternoon, Victor said from the driver's seat. Very unfortunate. He's in intensive care. My heart stopped. Rico was my only ally. The only person who knew the truth about Elena's identity and criminal history. Don't worry, Elena said, patting my hand like a concerned wife. It wasn't fatal. We're not monsters. But he'll be unconscious for several days, and by then this will all be resolved. The SUV pulled into an abandoned warehouse district, the kind of place where screams wouldn't be heard and bodies could be disposed of efficiently. This was it. The end of Owen Grant, loving husband and successful businessman. But Elena had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I was helpless, that removing Rico from the equation would leave me defenseless. She didn't know about the backup plan, the evidence I'd hidden, the people I'd contacted. As Victor parked the SUV, I smiled for the first time in days. Something funny? Elena asked. Just thinking about how surprised you're going to be. About what? About discovering that your husband isn't as stupid as you thought. The warehouse was exactly what I'd expected. Empty, isolated, perfect for homicide. Victor had done this before. He knew how to choose locations where bodies could be disposed of without investigation. But Elena had made a critical error in bringing me here alive. She wanted to gloat, to explain how clever she'd been, to enjoy my fear before finishing the job. That need for psychological dominance was going to be her downfall. Before we proceed, I said as Victor tied my hands to a chair, I'm curious about something. How many husbands have you actually ended? Elena smiled proudly. 4 successful completions before you. Marcus handles the medical aspects. I handle the relationship management. Victor handles any complications that arise. Like Rico? Rico was getting too close to the truth. We couldn't let him interfere with our timeline. What timeline? Your mother's health is declining faster than expected. The medications I've been giving her have accelerated her condition significantly. She has days, maybe a week. We needed you dead before she passes, so the inheritance flows through you to me as your widow. The casual admission of my mother's homicide made something snap inside me. Elena wasn't just ending me. She was torturing my mother to end for money. You're going to enjoy this, Elena said, pulling out a small device that looked like a remote control. Marcus developed this after the implant failure. It delivers a massive electrical shock directly to the heart. Instant cardiac arrest. Completely untraceable. She was so focused on explaining her clever homicide weapon that she didn't notice me working my hands free from the ropes. Victor had tied them quickly, carelessly, assuming I was too scared to resist. Any last words? Elena asked, finger poised over the device. Yeah, you should have checked your email this morning. Elena frowned. What? The email I sent to the FBI, the state police, my lawyer, and about 20 other people. Complete documentation of your criminal history. Rico's evidence files. Photos of you and Marcus together. Financial records showing the money transfers. Medical records proving you've been poisoning my mother. Elena's face went pale. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your phone. I bet you have several missed calls from Marcus. The FBI raided his clinic about an hour ago. Elena fumbled for her phone, hands shaking. Victor moved closer, sensing something was wrong. The email was scheduled to send automatically if I didn't cancel it by 6 p.m., I continued, slipping my hands completely free. Since I'm tied up in a warehouse instead of home canceling it, everyone now knows exactly who you are and what you've done. Elena's phone showed 17 missed calls from Dr. Weld, and 3 from numbers she didn't recognize. Her carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. Victor, end him now, she snapped. But Victor was already moving toward the warehouse entrance, where the sound of approaching sirens was growing louder. He hadn't signed up for a federal investigation. Victor! Elena screamed. You didn't pay me enough for this! Victor called back, disappearing through the door. Elena turned back to me, the shock device raised, but I was already out of the chair. 5 years of marriage had taught me Elena's weaknesses. She was physically weak, psychologically dependent on others to handle violence, and she panicked when her plans fell apart. I grabbed her wrist, easily taking the device away. Elena stumbled backward, suddenly looking small and frightened. The police will be here in minutes, I said. You can run, but they know who you are now. Angela Voss, serial killer, wanted in connection with 4 homicides and multiple fraud charges. Owen, please, Elena said, tears streaming down her face. We can work this out. I never meant for it to go this far. You were poisoning my mother. That was Marcus's idea. I just wanted the money. You planted a homicide device in my body, but I didn't activate it. I couldn't go through with it. The lies came so easily, even now. Elena would say anything to save herself, promise anything to avoid consequences. The warehouse doors burst open as FBI agents flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Elena raised her hands in surrender, still crying, probably already planning her defense strategy. Owen Grant, one of the agents called. Here, I said, stepping away from Elena. She's all yours. They arrested Elena with professional efficiency, reading her rights, while she sobbed about being coerced and manipulated. Even in handcuffs, she was working the angles, trying to find someone who might believe her sufferer act. Agent Sarah Chen interviewed me for 3 hours, going through every detail of Elena's plan and my investigation. The evidence Rico and I had gathered was solid. Bank records, surveillance photos, medical documents, recordings of Elena's admissions in the warehouse. We've been tracking Angela Voss for 2 years, Agent Chen said. She's suspected in at least 6 homicides across 4 states. Your evidence finally gives us enough to prosecute. What about Dr. Weld? In custody. His clinic was a front for medical fraud and illegal procedures. We found equipment for manufacturing tracking devices, poison capsules, and other homicide weapons. He's looking at life in prison. And my mother? Safe. We have her in protective custody and medical care. The poisoning was caught early enough. She should make a full recovery. I walked out of the FBI building at dawn, exhausted but alive. Elena was in federal custody, Weld was facing multiple homicide charges, and Victor was being hunted by every law enforcement agency in the country. The nightmare was over. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Elena, Angela Voss, receive 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. She'd tried every defense strategy her lawyers could devise, but the evidence was overwhelming. She looked different in prison orange, smaller somehow, without the designer clothes and careful makeup. Just another criminal who'd finally been caught. As the judge read the sentence, Elena turned to look at me one last time. No tears now, no sufferer act. Just the cold stare of the aggressor who'd been outmaneuvered by her intended prey. I stared back without flinching. Owen Grant, the man she'd planned to homicide for money, had survived to see justice done. After the trial, I visited my mother, who was recovering well from her poisoning. Ruth was tougher than Elena had realized. It would take more than a few doctored medications to end a woman who'd survived 83 years of life's challenges. "I'm sorry I didn't see through her," Ruth said. "She seemed so devoted. She fooled everyone, Mom. That's what made her dangerous. What will you do now?" I'd been thinking about that question for months. Elena had stolen 5 years of my life, made me question everything about love and trust and human nature, but she hadn't broken me. Live, I said. Really live for the first time in years. Rico recovered from his injuries and returned to work, prouder than ever of the case that had taken down a serial killer. We stayed in touch, bonded by the experience of hunting an aggressor and surviving her trap. The house Elena and I had shared was sold, the proceeds donated to sufferers' rights organizations. I moved across the country, started a new business, began the process of rebuilding a life that was truly my own. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I hadn't overheard that conversation during the vasectomy, if I'd remained oblivious to Elena's plan until it was too late. But those thoughts never lasted long. I'd survived Angela Voss, the Black Widow who'd ended 4 men and tried to make me number 5. That was enough victory for any lifetime. Elena, Angela, whoever she really was, would spend the rest of her life in prison, where she could plan all the homicides she wanted but never hurt anyone again. Justice had been served with surgical precision. The end.